Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob George, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Utah, director of the Utah NeuroRobotics Lab. And today I'll be talking about our exciting research on controlling bionic arms with our thoughts. But before I dive into the research, I'd like to take a minute to think about how our life would change if we suffered from limb loss. So imagine you've just woken up in the hospital to find out that both of your hands have been amputated. How do you go about your daily life? How do you hold a fork to feed yourself? How do you tie your shoes in the morning? Or how do you play catch with your kid? But more importantly, how do you feel? Physically, the world that's around you, but also emotionally as a whole individual. As put by one of the amputee participants we've worked with, losing a limb is like losing a family member, except you're reminded of it every day. In the United States alone, there's 1.6 million individuals who suffer from limb loss. That's nearly 1 in every 200 individuals. And disability is not just functional, but also emotional and psychological. Most amputees also suffer from chronic pain, anxiety, and depression. The current standard of care is not satisfactory, and as a result, nearly half of all amputees abandon their prostheses, never to use them again. If you had an amputation today, you'd most likely be prescribed this, which is a body-powered prosthetic hook. And this is, no joke, the same technology that's been used since the American Civil War. Alternatively, you could get a cosmetic hand, which might look a little more realistic, but would actually provide zero functionality. And then recently, there's been this new wave of multi-articulate bionic arms to enter the market. And these bionic arms are actually capable of recreating all of the different types of grip patterns that a natural hand can make. But controlling one of these advanced bionic arms is not an easy or intuitive task. If you had one of these devices today, you'd likely be wearing tilt switches on your feet, where one foot actually toggles through a series of menus for your hand, and then the other foot would actually initiate those movements. And as you can imagine, this means you can truly not walk and use your hands at the same time. So imagine a world in which we could control these advanced bionic arms simply by thought. And it might sound crazy, but it's really not, because each and every one of us typically control our hands by our thoughts naturally. So when you think about moving your hand, information starts in your brain, comes down through your nerves as an electrical signal, which then goes to your muscles, which causes your muscles to contract, which pulls on your tendons, and then causes your hand to actually move. After an amputation, that same biological pathway still exists. It's just the terminal device, your hand in this case, is not there to physically move. So what if we could just tap into those existing biological signals and use those as an intuitive control signal for these advanced bionic arms? So that's what we're working on at the University of Utah. And to do this, we implant a device, pictured here, the Utah slanted electrode array, into the residual arm nerves of an individual. We also have a device that we implant into the muscles of the amputee as well. From there, when the person thinks about an action, such as grabbing an object, that information starts in their brain, transmits down through their nerves as electrical signals, which we can then record on these devices that are implanted in their body. We can then use artificial intelligence to translate those signals that we're recording from their body into dexterous and intuitive control of a bionic arm. And what's cooler than a bionic arm controlled by thought is a bionic arm that can also restore a sense of touch back to a user. So in this case, when the prosthetic hand makes contact with an object, we can record the forces that come on the mechanical bionic hand, and we can translate those into stimulation parameters, electrical stimulation of the arm nerve, which then sends information back up the nervous system through the natural biological pathway that the person can then interpret that information as if it was a sensation coming from their missing hand. And the exciting part here is we can tie the motor control and the sensory feedback together to create a closed-loop control system where your motor actions influence your sensory perception, and your sensory feedback also guides your motor control. And ultimately, using this closed-loop control system, we hope to create something that's no longer just a prosthetic hand, but replaces the hand and ultimately becomes like a biological limb. So using this system, we've been able to demonstrate that it improves patients' dexterity, so they can manipulate fragile objects without breaking them, and they can also identify objects by touch alone. What's cooler is that this system can also reduce chronic pain, and the implanted devices are viable long-term. But the most exciting part about this is that using this closed-loop control system, we can actually start to see a sense of embodiment emerge. An embodiment is this belief that the prosthetic hand is a part of your body, and a part of your body image, and no longer just a tool. So what does embodiment look like? To demonstrate this, I'll describe what happens in this video. The individual reaches out and he goes and touches the door, and all of a sudden when he makes contact with the door, he jumps back and he says, "Oh my God, I just felt that door." And the important part of this is his expression in the way he describes this interaction. So in this case, he doesn't say, "I felt something on my hand," but he says, "Oh my God, I just felt that door," as if it was a natural extension of his body, this bionic limb. Another example of this embodiment happened when we had a participant controlling a 3D printed bionic hand. And in this case, same idea, the person thinks about moving their hand, the hand moves, and when they make contact with objects, they can feel that sense of touch coming back to them. And in this case, at the end of the experimental session, one of us asks, "Is there anything that you'd like to hold?" And the participant responds by saying, "I'd like to clasp my hands together." And the subjective use of the word "my" here implies that the bionic arm has risen to a level that's almost equivalent to his natural biological limb.
Is there anything you want to grasp that you see?
I want to clasp my hands together.
You can clasp your hands together if you want. Go ahead.
Pretty weird.
And if there's anything better than feeling your own hand again after 13 years, it's feeling the hand of a loved one. Pictured here is our participant's first opportunity to hold hands with his wife again and feel her touch once again. So what we've seen so far is that it's not just about the sensory feedback and your sense of touch, and it's not just about dexterous control of your hand, but it's about the combination of the two and the sense of embodiment that it creates. So moving forward, I'm excited to say that we have now FDA clearance for at-home studies, and we're also partnering with a company to commercialize this technology and bring it to everyone. And we hope that extended long-term use of this technology will amplify the benefits that we've seen so far. And as put by one of our participants, soon it will be just like Luke Skywalker, and then everyone will want one. And yes, that's exactly what we're working on. We're developing a wristband or a smartwatch that's capable of recording electrical activity in your arms and then can use that information to control smart devices in your home. So yes, each and every one of you here will soon be Jedi Masters, and you will be able to control smart home devices telepathically. But who will this technology really benefit the most? It's probably not you or me. It's the millions of individuals out there who are suffering from life-altering neuromuscular disabilities. So it's people with paralysis as well as limb loss, so spinal cord injury, amputation, traumatic brain injury, stroke. All these types of individuals are being treated at the Craig H. Nielsen Rehabilitation Hospital. And in this hospital, we have a variety of different assistive smart home technology, and our goal is that these individuals can control this technology simply by thought and interact with their environment around them. We had the opportunity to test this technology with an individual recently who had a very high-level spinal cord injury, and this is what they had to say.
I'm more excited about this than, honestly, anything that's happened since I broke my neck. I mean, 10 degrees of freedom, I could just imagine anything.
So the possibilities truly are endless. If you can imagine it, then we'll be working on it at the Utah NeuroRobotics Lab to turn science fiction into reality. With that, I'd like to thank the many individuals who've contributed to this work, as well as our research funding agencies and our industry partners. And thank you all for listening.